Hello everybody, this is Leon and welcome to my video today. In today's video, you already know what I'm going to make. It is God Art from God Eater series. And as you can see here, it is pretty huge. I have to move all the way back so this sword can fit into the frame. It is made out of EVA foam. It is also fully detachable. So as usual, I've included all the template and the link is down in the description below. So if you want to know how I make this huge sword, the tutorial will be coming up next. Just a disclaimer, this build will be longer than my life, and it also consists of many different parts like JoJo's Adventure. So bear with me and I promise you will learn something. The template that I've included is Pepakura file. Just open it with Pepakura Viewer and print the template out on paper and you're good to go. Pepakura Viewer is a free software that allows you to view 3D model as flat template, so it is perfect for props making. After printed out on A4 paper, I usually cut away the marking line and attach them with tape. Then I will use a glue stick to stick template onto the art card. This provides stronger and harder beds for me to keep in storing purposes, so it really depends if you need to do this step. Next is cut out all the necessary parts. First, let's start with the main blade. I use 5mm 70° hardness EVA foam for this. Then I trace it with a silver gel paint, so it will be visible on black EVA foam. And then I make a 45° slanted cut on this edge, and the rest will be just straight 90° cut. Next, let's move to the middle support. I use 75° hardness 3mm EVA foam and slanted cut on the long edge. For both of the shorter edge, a 90° straight cut will do just fine. After that, I glue the middle support with Superglue. To get a nice finishing, the trick is to glue it slowly and bit by bit. Once I've done that, I move on to the outer edge. I've cut a few 2cm wide EVA foam strap on a 75° hardness 3mm foam to use it as an outer edge support. This can ensure the whole blade structure is sturdy and will not shaky. Just like the middle support, I also use Superglue to attach this. Next, let's move to the middle blade. First, get the template ready, and then remove the top part. Then remove the teeth part because we only need the main part for now. Next, trace two pieces of this onto a 60° hardness 5mm EVA foam and cut it out. There will be no slanted cut on any of the edges, so it will be only straight cut. Move back to the template and remove the center piece. Mark the position of the foam, then cut two pieces of each one and stick them on with contact adhesive. The reason I'm using contact adhesive is because it has longer working time and gives better coverage. Now the second blade base is done. Let's move on to the next part, which is the handle part. Just like the other parts, just follow the Pepakura as the main reference. Prepare the template and cut it out on 5mm EVA foam. The cutting method will be just slanted cut on every edge. Then I use Superglue to stick all the edges first. Once it is done, let's move back to the middle blade. Bring back the template and let's do this part. I use 60° hardness 5mm EVA foam for this part, so it will be strong enough to hold the shape and keep it lightweight. For the other side, just simply use same template and extend a little bit will do just fine. Now mark a 6cm marking here. This will be used for the attachment later. Now get ready the attachment template, but first I make some marking before cutting it so it will be not confusing like my future. Then I cut them out. Use 5mm EVA foam for the attachment. Then I use a 1-inch aluminium tube, make a marking at about 25cm and cut it with a tube cutter. I use a deburring tool and diamond file to clean out the card. Then I cut a few pieces of 1cm EVA foam as filling just to support the attachment structure. After that, I use steel epoxy as bonding agent because metal doesn't bond well with contact adhesive or superglue. To use an epoxy glue, all you have to do is to mix the AB part evenly at 1:1 ratio, then apply onto the surface. For the foam to foam part, I'm still using Superglue because it works faster compared to epoxy and cheaper. After attaching everything inside, then seal it with the other bigger piece. Next, proceed to the other piece of attachment part. This one is much easier compared to the other one. Just follow the Pepakura and then make slanted cut on every connected edge. Once I got something like this, I added in strong magnet before covering the other side. I push the magnet on the foam to mark the position, and then I cut a hole with a knife, put the foam back to the hole. Then take the magnet, push it in the hole and glue it. After that, I attach another magnet onto it and use it to mark the magnet position on the other side attachment. Then I cut a hole, put some super glue and stick the magnet onto it. Once I'm done with both sides of magnets, now I can cover this part. Next, I stick the attachment on the middle blade with Superglue. I also use this template to make a support for the aluminum in the middle blade, so it will stay as it and will not shaky. Now let's move to the handle, and I recommend using 75° hardness 3mm foam for this part. Let's start with tracing this onto the foam. Make low angle slanted cut on every edge, and straight cut for the circle. And for this, only the longer end will require low angle cut, while the other will only need around 30° angle. This will be the parts required for one side of the handle. Just like I mentioned earlier, all of these will need slanted cut except for the circle. Then first stick all the side part onto the bigger hexagon. Then join the side part, lastly will be the smaller hexagon. Then it should look like this. Next, let's move on to this. Just follow the model, trace onto the foam, make slanted cut on all edges. For these details, I just simply cut it and push it inward. Put some glue at all the seams, and then cut away the excess at the back. After getting the parts ready, get a 1-inch 37cm aluminum tube. And this will be used as the handle support. Now slot in the foam handle and push to one end, and slot the other side into here. Then cut 2 pieces of this, and use it as support for the aluminum. Then slot this onto the aluminum to get it positioned. After that, use a 1cm thickness EVA foam, attach it to here to support the attachment. Next, I use a 20cm long 2.2cm PVC pipe and cut 2 straps 2mm EVA foam and stick onto both sides of the PVC pipe. Then you will get something like this. After that, attach this PVC pipe into the aluminum tube with epoxy. Now move on to the top handle. Yes, template, trace to the foam and glue it like usual. You know the drill. Only thing I need to mention is all slanted cut except for this long end. So it will turn into something like this. Then I use a 40cm long 1-inch PVC pipe, drill 2 parallel holes on both ends. After that, I slot in a metal wire into both ends like this, and use hot glue to glue it in place. After that, roll the wire like this, make a pass into here, and use a hot glue to seal it. Now place it onto the handle and mark the position. And I drill the foam instead of poking hole because I can. Now slot in the wire into this hole, and glue one wire to one side. After that, use contact adhesive to attach the attachment onto the handle. Then I use Superglue for this both sides because I'm lazy. And hot glue the wire like the other side. Now for this one, tie it at the aluminum tube. And use epoxy to stick it in place. The final step for the handle is to glue everything in place. But because of me being paranoid, I decided to add another piece at here to strengthen the gun attachment afterward. Now it is done and time to seal it. I use contact adhesive for this part and superglue for the edges. And next will be the front to middle blade attachment. This part is pretty simple, it is just the brick and the sleeve. To make the brick, I also added a 1cm foam inside as support. Once I've gotten something like this, I slot in the brick to make marking. And here's the magic magnet trick, to enhance the old attachment, so the attachment can be stronger than most relationships. I also add magnet to other attachment on both sides as well, so total 8 magnets are being used here. After that, I also trim this excess part so the attachment can be nice and smooth. Now get the front blade, place the attachment accordingly, and stick it with forbidden ketchup. Then for the side, just superglue will do just fine. After that, seal the front blade with the other piece with contact adhesive and superglue. Now move this away and time for the blade. I recommend using 75° hardness 3mm EVA foam for the blade, because the sharp blade has lower surface area and might get damaged easily, so we'll need harder foam for more durability. All the edges will need to be slanted cut as well, and for the sharp blade edge we'll need even lower angle than the other edges. After cutting the foam, use superglue to join the blade first, then stick it onto the main blade. Before joining the tip, I cut a V-groove at the tip, and stick a wooden skewer in it to enhance the tip. After that, join the other blade. Now the tip will be much stronger than my wheel to lift. Lastly, we'll be finishing up the remaining blade. Now the front blade is done, time to do the middle blade. First, start from attaching this onto the attachment, then sandwich 2 pieces of 3mm EVA foam and stuff into this gap. Then use superglue to keep it in place. Then use superglue to stick both of the attachment onto the middle blade. Then for the other side, I decided not to be lazy, so I use contact adhesive for this. After that, just join the other piece onto the blade. And now it shall look like this. Next will be the top part on the middle blade. I use 5mm EVA foam slanted cut on every edge. Now just join them with superglue slowly and stick it onto the middle blade. Also don't forget to cover the end. After that, I use 1cm EVA foam for the teeth part. This part is pretty simple, but cutting 1cm EVA foam is pretty challenging. Hand has to be steady and stay straight to get a clean cut. Then stick this onto the blade, mark the sharp part, and get it sand down with rotary tool. Now let's move on to this. This is the handle tip. The making is the same, but only this part is different. You don't need to cut a hole, but just cutting a groove. It is just for the aluminum tube to stuck it here. Next will be the handle tip. I changed the design at the end so it will be more sturdy, but the build is pretty much the same and easier. Then use smaller aluminum tube poking this side to mark the position, and then cut a hole on both of these to stuff the aluminum tube in. Next, trim down the excess aluminum tube and use epoxy to stick it onto the foam. Then I also stick some 5mm EVA foam around the tube so it can fit perfectly into the bigger tube. Lastly is to stick this onto it with epoxy as well. Next, I use the smaller tube, adding 5mm EVA foam around it and stick it onto this handle. This will be used for the handle attaching part, so the handle can be detachable. And you're right, we're not done yet. Now for the pew pew part. It seems a lot, but it is just huge and a lot of repetitions, like a lot of circles. Use 5mm EVA foam for this, trace all the circles, slanted cut inward for both long edges. And then cut all the circles nicely and do not throw them away, because we will need to push it in a little bit, and then glue the seams to make the circle details. Lastly, roll the foam and join the both ends. Now move on to this and cut 2 pieces of this. First, just join one side to this part and then slot in the PVC pipe. This PVC pipe are 1 inch diameter and 35 cm long, and we will need 6 for the gun. After positioning the other circle, then can just simply join it with super glue, and you should get something like this. Move on to the next thing. Use basically the same method and complete the rest of the part. And then for this part, I make marking from the template and give 3 bars gap and 5 bars as pop-up details. After that, I connect all the markings, cut the template, and then join the 5mm EVA foam pop-up details onto it. After that, just roll it over and join both ends together, and finishing up the both circle side like the other part. And now the main gun structure is done. Next is to attach the gun onto the handle. Place it onto the handle and mark it with silver gel pen, then stick it onto the handle. After that, I also did a little bit of rounding with rotary tool to give this part a little bit of finishing touch, because now I'll be adding more details onto the gun. I added 1cm wide 3mm EVA foam onto this part, joining all the gun parts together. Then I use a self-made EVA foam ruler to measure the PVC pipe circumference and length, and then cut 6 of it on 5mm EVA foam. I also freehand the template a little bit, trace onto the foam, and join the both ends with glue. Then I make slight cut on this marking and hit it with heat gun. The heat will cause the gap to open, like how my heart is open for you. After that, just slot this into the PVC pipe and stick it with glue. Move on to this part. I use 5mm EVA foam as the base. I only make one side slanted cut here because it doesn't have to be 45 degree. Then add on the side details, which is also using 5mm EVA foam. After that, I use contact adhesive to stick this onto the base. Once it's done, mark the position on the gun and put a little bit of glue, just enough to hold it and stick onto it. Move on to the last part of the gun. This part is pretty simple. Just follow the Pepakura and you will get it there. After that, attach it to here and the gun is ready. Finally, this is the shield part. I first start with the shield base. I use 5mm EVA foam for the base, and I also did slanted cut on every edge. And then I proceed to do the side and join them with the shield base. After that will be this part. This part is a little bit tricky because this side will be slanted cut outward and the notch will be straight cut. Next, we'll be adding this onto the both sides. Now proceed to this. This one is a little bit tricky as well. The bottom will be straight cut, and then this edge will be slanted cut inward, but the notch will be straight cut. After that, join these two first and then the remaining part. And now you will have something like this. Next, we'll be adding the top layer on the shield base. Use 3mm EVA foam for this part and stick them onto it with contact adhesive. Once the top layer is done, join these two parts together. After that, I use heat gun to heat up both sides of the center shield and push it on something round to give it a nice round curve. Then just add on the remaining details. And also the bottom cover for the shield. Now the shield is done. Next thing is just repeat the same step and make another shield. Now is the attachment for the shield. This attachment is very simple. Use 1cm EVA foam for the cube, and then also 1cm EVA foam for the other part. After that, cut a hole to put the magnet in for stronger grip. I use 4 magnets for one attachment, and it has to be strong magnets so the attachment will be stronger than muscle relationship. Next, mark the position of the attachment on the template so it will be easier to position on the other side, and then stick the attachment onto it. Moving on to the next step, I remove this gun cover part to do the next interesting part. I use this spray can type expanding foam and spray around the handle to create Oracle cell effect. To use this, please keep in mind it will take roughly 5 to 20 minutes to expand and to cure. Before it cures, it will remain wet and sticky, so make sure do not touch it with bare hand. But once it's dry, it's not harmful to be handled with unless you eat it. Next, before I add the expanding foam onto the handle, I add a little fence onto it so it can give stronger grip for the expanding foam to stick onto. After leaving it for 10 minutes, I squeeze it with hand to give it a more uneven texture. Now for the final finishing touch, I add a little bit more details onto this part which no one can see. The groove heating with heat gun and also the rivet pin. Finally, before the paint job, I add a lube on all these parts so it will be easier for me to hang it after spraying. I first use water-based paint as the base primer and paint everything with a spray gun. Other than this priming method, you can also use white glue to prime it. Priming foam is important because it gives base layer for other paints to stick onto. After priming it, I first start with the base layer, which is my favorite matte black. Next, use masking tape to mask all the black parts. This is an extremely long and boring process, but it is a necessary step to get the perfect look. After that, I first paint silver base with spray gun, and next paint with metallic pink as my client requested. I also get a metal half sphere and paint it with gold. This will be used for the Oracle core. Grease it with violin and then use epoxy to stick it. After that, I use hot glue to seal the edge and also adding cell vine onto it. Lastly, just paint it with black acrylic. I also use black acrylic to dry brush the shadow to give it contrast. Lastly, go on the handle, and it is done.